are live. Eric Butler, we are live. This is real. Welcome back to Unauthorized Opinions, UOPod.com. Like, share, subscribe.
It's pure propaganda and it's super cringe, by the way.
An unopened can of orange soda just chilling in the parking lot. I was like, yeah, I gotta vote for Trump, dude.
It's great here, a lot of fat chicks and a lot of screaming.
Your podcast sucks. It's mental, mate.
Hola, buenos dias. That's about bonjour. That's about the limit to my languages, I think.
Donde está la biblioteca?
Is that a library?
Yeah, where's the library? Or, of course, Donde está el baño? Classic stuff.
Where's the banjo?
Yeah, where's the banjo? Exactly. Yeah, dude, so I got is this an upgrade? I think this might be an upgrade. As you can see.
Judging by the background on your TV, I'd say it's a living upgrade. If you're indeed in front of a waterfall.
Yeah, that's what I have. That's my soothing. When I would say like study, but I haven't studied in a decade, so I don't know. It's just, it's better than a blank screen, I guess.
Very true. Appreciation to the people in the chat saying that we're late. We're late by like a minute. I mean, wow. We've been much later, but we appreciate you guys keeping us on our toes, and it will only make us better. Thanks for watching. UOPod.com is where you can find all of our links. Of course, we want you to sign up for Patreon at patreon.com/UOPod, because we have a free podcast, a bonus podcast every single week that's on there, uncensored, exclusive segments, and of course you get the other stuff first. For example,
it goes completely off the rails.
It does. It really does. Voodoo, Ouija boards, and everything like that. Last week, Eric, we talked about Ben and Jerry's, and Ben and Jerry's made a big stink with everybody because they basically said they hate America. And this was on the bonus podcast, which you would have seen if you're one of our patrons. Ben and Jerry's on the 4th of July said that America should give back Mount Rushmore to the native tribe that, had it at the time that they took it from them. I'm sure somebody else owned it before them. And I didn't realize, Eric, that they also said that Canada was on stolen land on Canada Day. So a country that their company isn't in, they were criticizing as well.
Oh, you guys don't have Ben and Jerry's?
I mean, we do have it, but like their factories in Vermont, as we realized, it actually says that on the label, Vermont's finest. I'm looking at it right now. And so they just go, I'm sure that they say the same thing in Australia if they sell it there. Oh, Aboriginal Day should be Australia Day or whatever like that. So they got their problems. And we were saying that they should just give their factory over. If they believe that their factory or their facility is on stolen land as well in Vermont, one of the oldest states there is in existence, then they should give it back. Maybe they should move to like a Guam or something, or maybe Puerto Rico, and help those economies out. But it turns out there was a native tribe that was thinking along the same lines as we are, Eric.
And I can assume that wasn't it was the most obvious statement to make, right? Like,
exactly.
It wasn't just us. Everybody had to say that. And I just also wanted to mention that they're from Vermont. Clearly, that's where they're like HQ or whatever. But am I wrong in saying that it's heavily sort of associated with? I mean, I think of San Francisco when I think of Ben and Jerry's. I mean, they have the giant Ben and Jerry's store right on the corner of Haight and Ashbury, a pretty famous street corner, right? Like they're known to be hippies. They've been pushing this radical weirdo leftist stuff for a really long time, which I guess is also, Vermont could be very associated with radical weirdo lefty positions as well. So it's a
much
mess.
Wealthier probably positions. I'm going to see, are you getting stat? Did you just mute yourself? Anyway, it's gone. So this indigenous tribe requests Ben and Jerry's stolen land that company's headquarters is built on. Ben and Jerry's headquarters in Vermont, an area that originally belonged to Native American tribes. Wow. What an impressive revelation we have there. Indigenous tribe members who are descendants of Native Americans requested the return of stolen land, in quotes, that ice cream company Ben Jerry sits on. According to Newsweek, and we are reading from americasvoice.news right now, According to Newsweek, chief of the Nulhagen Band of the Kusuk Abenaki Nation, Don Stevens. Let me read that again. Eric's gone, but let me read that again. Don Stevens, who is the chief of the Nulhagen Band of the Kusuk Abenaki Nation, is always interested in reclaiming the stewardship of our lands, but the ice cream company has not contacted them. Ben & Jerry's headquarters is in Vermont, in an area that originally belonged to Native American tribes. That much should be obvious. This request comes shortly after the ice cream company's controversial 4th of July post. The company said to return the land of Native Americans needs to start with Mount Rushmore. Let's see if the Native tribe said anything else. They did not. But this is the obvious, the obvious solution here. You believe the entire country is on stolen land, and then all of a sudden you're just like, hey, everybody needs to give back their land except for us. We're the only people whose land is, so awesome that we shouldn't have to give it back. And this is just why, these narratives don't take a hold. This is why they don't make sense, is because when you're in some sort of job position or some sort of industry, for example, and you say, we need more black and indigenous voices or whatever they say at the time, then give up your job. If you believe so strongly that it's better for people to own something or be in a position based on their skin color or where they were born, then you should probably just give up your position, because that's the most righteous thing you can do. Am I wrong about that?
No, but again, look, this is all using the assumption that any of this is genuine, right? We already did this, okay? We know that it's not real. We know that they're not really going to do any of this stuff. They just want a virtue signal, and apparently some people are still eating it up. A lot of people, I think we are making our way slowly back to sanity, and most people can see directly through this, and that's why most people are saying, well, just go ahead and give it up if you're so up in arms about the stolen land, and go ahead and give it up. Everybody knows that. I think that's the majority of people. There's a tiny fringe minority, as some might say, of people who still can't see it. But what you're saying, I think, uses the assumption that any of it's genuine, and I just, we all know it's not genuine. So we can this. Again.
What is it about ice cream companies where they have such identity crises? Like Haagen-Dazs is from New Jersey. I'm sure nobody thinks that Haagen-Dazs is from New Jersey.
Episode about that.
Well, it's just weird. Like, why do ice cream companies have this charade about them? Can you mute your mic when you're not talking? Is that possible? Is that annoying? Because whenever you're not talking, we're getting static.
Really? Okay.
There you go. Yeah. So just click it on and off whenever you want to talk, unfortunately. So they're already super expensive, Eric, and Haagen-Dazs is super expensive here. And then we've got this ice cream called Chapman's here, which is a little social justice-y, but their factory burned down a few years ago, which makes no sense at all. It's just like something always weird is going on with ice cream companies. And then, have you heard of this company called Magnum Ice Cream? Do you have that wherever you've been?
Yeah, I've seen that before. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if
it's just weird. I'm just saying it's weird because they're also an ice cream company that basically makes themselves like they want to remind you of condoms, and like they make like their packaging like weird and sexual almost. I know that it's ice cream, but I'm just saying there's something weird about ice cream people. Do you have what do you call my question for you? Sorry, my question for you is: do you have those people that ride around on bicycles with freezers on them and ice cream? And what do you guys call them?
I've seen that. I never actually had a name for them. I couldn't say like, oh, there's the. I mean, just be like, I don't know if they've ever been a special name. I don't know if there's any correlation with social justice warriors and ice cream companies. But it's like, dude, first of all, this one is getting so old. Ben & Jerry's is one of the oldest weirdo commie companies in the country. So it's not new. We did this last week. But I think what I will say about ice cream is that maybe there is something there. If we want to go full tinfoil hat stuff, We know how Nancy Pelosi has her freezer. Do we remember that? Nancy Pelosi has her
Right.
freezer full of $20 a pint or something, some ridiculously expensive amount of ice cream, which I think was Van Leeuwen, I believe. And we also know that Joe Biden, he can't be bothered to answer any questions about actual issues. Horrible Afghanistan pullout, $5 million bribes, Hunter Biden doing blow in the White House. He can't be bothered to answer any of those questions. He only wants to tell you that he likes chocolate chip. You know what I mean? So there is something strange about that. But as far as this, genuine question here. What did Ben and Jerry's expect? They expected that all the weirdo, the commie lefties on Twitter to light up and go buy ice cream. What did they expect for this what did they expect to happen? Have they not been paying attention at all to Target or Bud Light or any of that stuff? Or is it, like I've been saying for a very long time, far more important for them to push the agenda than it is to even make a little bit of money, because they already have so much money that's almost useless to them at this point, and it's far more important to push the agenda home.
They're very agenda driven. They always have been, from what I'm aware of. And what's interesting is, about a day after, oh wait, this is the wrong thing, but Ben and Jerry's co-founders arrested during protests at the U.S. Capitals. They were one of them was arrested for protesting Julian Assange the other day, which is a very interesting. We just lost it there. Let me share it again. Very interesting contrast to what these people do. And like, it's kind of like those broken clock situations. But Ben and Jerry's founder arrested by Department of Homeland Security protesting outside Justice Department. How does Julian Assange not make it into the title, Fox News? Like, you don't want to say Julian Assange in your title. That's a little odd, I think. But Fox is really going downhill. Ben and Jerry's founder Ben Cohen was arrested Thursday by Department of Homeland Security police for blocking the entrance of the DOJ building in D.C., where he's protesting the detainment of Julian Assange. So it's very weird, because on one hand, you've got people who are very anti-America, but then you've got people, you would assume that they're probably supporters of the Democrats. And Julian Assange's WikiLeaks is what basically ended Hillary Clinton's reign of terror. But then you might be able to assume, Eric, that they're further left of Hillary Clinton, and they actually want to see the Democrats crumble. So they're more in favor of, just taking down the government as a whole, and the whole thing that WikiLeaks stands for. Very confusing, these ice cream people. And to answer an earlier question, we call them Dickie D's, was the brand of people riding around on the bike. Dickie D's.
Never heard of it. Doesn't ring a bell.
We'll hold it there for applause. Mel Gibson is in the news a lot lately. He was seen at the UFC event last night. Now, what's the name of this movie that came out? I wrote about it. I should remember. Sound of Freedom. Now, he did a promotion for that movie because everybody knows he's sort of into that thing, into exposing child trafficking. So he's been in the news a lot lately. Here he is saluting Donald Trump when he came in. Trump got a huge applause at the UFC event. I should let everybody know. A couple times. There were so many celebrities there last night. It was kind of strange. David Spade, all the UFC champions. Guy Fieri, yeah, of course.
He's my
so
favorite.
many people there.
Guy. I think he's funny to me. I don't know. Like,
I like
funny. I like Guy, and I like Rick Ross. I like those guys.
Your pantheon. Eric wants to buy Mount Rushmore to put them on it. Guy Fieri just likes everything. That's the only problem I have with it. There's nothing on the show that he doesn't like, but maybe he's tested it before. So there's a video. Well, first let's get to Post Millennial, what they had to say. And, Post Millennial, I share my opinions on them because for examples like this, and just as a side note, President Trump holds meeting with Mel Gibson and Roger Stone after Sound of Freedom tops box office. None of that is true, except for the Sound of Freedom tops the box office on July 4th. They didn't hold a meeting. They were seen talking together backstage at a UFC event, and they have no idea if that has anything to do with the Sound of Freedom. This is just putting things in a headline at this point. Good job, Jack.
Jack wrote this? Who wrote this?
Unassigned, because they know what they're doing. No person, because they know what they're doing when they do something like that. Hit me up another time for more conspiracies about Post Millennial and Rumble, everybody. That's neither here nor there. So they basically talk about how Trump, Mel Gibson, and what's his face, Roger Stone, were all backstage at the UFC event, but so were so many other people. So of course they're gonna talk. And Gibson's been promoting the Sound of Freedom, as I mentioned.
So hang on, can
Mhm.
we? Is it strange that that maybe the UFC has become this sort of weird ground for maybe the common sense type of people to start pushing back, just as the Bud Light boycott, like the most unassuming things have sort of become the uh, the meeting places for the people who want to push back against the establishment. Like, did anybody really think that I didn't think this Bud Light boycott was going to last this long or have this much of an impact. Same thing with Target, which may or may not have the staying power of the Bud Light thing. But Bud Light's completely gone. Trump is at basically all these UFC things in recent months. And Dana White, as we know, is pretty much like a kind of, we had that old clip of him, a year or so ago, pushing back on the medical establishment. So I guess my point is, it just seems a little strange, not in a bad way, but just like, of all the things that could be bringing people together, it's the UFC and Bud Light.
Well, it's very interesting, and I think the writing has been on the wall. As a person who is involved with the MMA community for a long time, like 6 or 7 years.
MMA community.
It
Jesus
is. It's
Christ. Okay.
people who are in the MMA. Sorry, there's a hockey community, Eric. There's a basketball community. There's an MMA community, and they generally do not care for shitty politics. I'll say for fakeness and all that stuff, because their livelihood is hurting each other. And what's the point of hiding how you feel or hiding what you think when you're not going to get fired for what you think, because it depends on how well you can beat up another person. So those opinions have always been out there. A couple of friends of mine who are fighters have always, shown this type of thought, this train of thought. And there's even one, like a comedian that I know that used to be an MMA fighter, who, is very much so, let's call him on the level. So it's no surprise to me. And you hear all these people talking in the UFC, and they pretty much always, praise President Trump when he's there. Even the South African guy was shaking Trump's hand. So everybody in the UFC, it's not a surprise to me. Dana White's attached to Nelk and Trump and
Now,
Jorge
what if
Masvidal and all these people who are pro-Trump and pro-freedom. And what were you going to say?
let's just for the sake of argument, what do you think would happen if Joe Biden were to show up at a UFC event?
I was thinking that last night too. I think he might get so confused that he might just walk into the ring after a fight and Joe Rogan's interviewing somebody, and it's just like, and I guess the president of the United States is in the octagon.
But
And
would
then
there
he'd
be
say,
one,
"Ugh."
like how when Trump's there and he gets these standing ovations and everybody wants to shake his hand and take a picture and all that? Even DJ Academics, right? You're familiar with DJ Academics? I mean, probably one of the premier YouTubers in the hip hop sector, right? Like, I think nobody was covering Chicago and Louisiana and all these like little sects of hip hop before DJ Academics, and of course he's become part of this culture war too, because he got a deal with Rumble, right? Like
Yeah.
he has an exclusive deal with Rumble. So think about that for a second. That's the establishment completely losing control, right?
Yep.
But would there
And
be
Rubble's
even
connected to the UFC as well.
there you go. Steve will do it, all that stuff, right? Even Sneeko, who's now become a cuck, different story. We could talk about Adam 22, which has been the biggest story on the internet, I think. Okay, maybe not the biggest story on the internet, but it is definitely getting the clicks. So mission accomplished for him, even though it came at a price, right? Like a price I'm not willing to pay, neither here nor there. Would there be one person, like everybody ringside, all these, I don't want to say pseudo celebrities, but celebrities in the sense that they're still kind of based or still kind of common sense or still like normal people, not the weirdo Hollywood View. I watched the
That
View
would love Biden being there.
yeah, like anybody that would want to be like, yeah, get a selfie, go up and shake his hand, or I mean, that to me should also be an indicator of where we're actually at right now. Can Joe Biden show up anywhere? Can Joe Biden show up at an NBA game, at a college football game? Nobody wants to see this guy.
Or at a Dairy Queen. What the hell is a blizzard? No, I think if Trump's all the way like on this side with the cheers and everything at a UFC event, you'd get like Biden all the way on like this is the middle, then he'd get the boo side. He'd get some dead silence and some boos. Whereas Trump gets like a huge applause at every UFC event. And this is in Vegas. So and of course a sporting crowd's more likely to be favoring Trump, but I don't think anybody likes Joe Biden. If he won the presidency, then he won because people just hated Trump that much and they'll vote for anybody. We see that all the time, though.
He won big time. Most
I said
popular president ever, you know?
I said if. Okay.
I mean, we all love him.
We all
Everybody
love
I
him.
know loves him. Yeah, he got the most.
Everybody
votes.
loves Trudeau. So this was posted by Elijah Schaefer on Twitter. I'm trying to find what the date was. 1998. He says, shocking, Mel Gibson is the real deal. I mean, and if you're old enough to remember, Mel Gibson went on a tirade where he mentioned Jewish people a whole bunch when he was drunk, and they tried to end his career for that. And then he's come back since then. I mean, he did Passion of the Christ. Obviously, he's a religious man. He's Australian, if you didn't know. Pretty much doesn't have an accent anymore. You might hear it on, I think you hear it on one word in this, but this is him talking about how weird and creepy Hollywood is.
Really came over here. You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
They don't.
And I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be. The whole place can't be like, you know, Weird Town, you know, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them. And they tell you don't go into the house on the hill. And it's like that. And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you were exactly on track with a lot of this stuff, that some of your worst nightmares were real at the time. And you think, a place like this can humiliate you. And it can humiliate you, it can be humbling. I mean, it does rip your life to pieces if you'll let it.
Yeah.
And it's always pounding at the walls. These little guys, these little heathens with no soul downstairs with horns on their head. You can't get mad. You can't let it get you, because you have to make a deal with everyone else, and it's almost unspoken that you are going to be fucked over at some point by people who you may have done something nice for. And it may happen that by circumstance, or even very purposefully, and I've often felt it. I've sat there, and I have felt the knife slip firmly in between my shoulder blades and tried to have it shoved through the other side through my heart. No, he came to see me on a rooftop in New York. I said, hey, can I talk to you? And he said, sure. He floated in.
I want to tell you who he's talking about. He mentions it after just so you can hear. He's talking about Christopher Walken here.
Sideways. Through a crowd of people. He was wearing black. And it was like one of those old vampire movies where they don't walk, but they glide. The air had turned cold. And then he left, and I wanted to leave. And because I knew that I didn't want to work with him. And he was getting scary. And then I turned around, and it was on top of the Peninsula Hotel. I turned around to avoid his steady gaze at one point. And I was looking at a building with the top of the sixes on it. So there was a huge illuminated 666 in red. And I went from that to that to that, and he started smiling. And I thought, oh no, Chris Walken is the Antichrist, you know? And I'll think, Walken, and you'll resent it for a little while, and you have to let it go. Otherwise, you'll eat yourself alive. And I think it takes that kind of cockroach resilience to survive in this town.
Eric, very impatient. You can't get a 3-minute video past him. So I think we could all pretty much fill in the blanks there. I think he was being a little bit joking with calling Christopher Walken the Antichrist, saying that he just doesn't like the guy and doesn't want to work with him. But given what he's been through and given like the stuff he alludes to, Where is he on the Richie the Barber scale for you, Eric? And I'll just set this up a little bit for the audience. Richie the Barber is a guy who tattoos his face like a clown and says he's a barber to the stars. He's been to all these satanic Hollywood parties. We don't really believe him based on the content we've seen from him. Some of our biggest clips are talking about him, and people kind of blindly believe him. Where are we believing Mel Gibson on the Richie the Barber scales?
Oh, this is way more believable than Richie the Barber for a couple of reasons, right? Of course, he's been at it. He's been in Hollywood. Can you hear me all right? Are we good?
Yep.
Yeah. He's been in Hollywood for far longer, right? He's probably got if I had to guess, at least a decade on Richie the Barber. So he's been around for much longer, and very obviously, they have tried to destroy his career at least once, if not twice. So there's no, as far as I can see, there's no hit pieces out on Richie. And shout out to Richie the Barber. No shade, but it's just like, dude, you can't just I will admit I'm not watching all of his content. I don't know how deep it goes or what he actually can prove. But he will just name drop and then say, "Oh, I can't say anymore. Oh, I can't say anymore. I can't say anymore." But Mel Gibson, has clearly. I mean, when I was young, I was in the case, oh, Mel Gibson's a crazy person. Like he's evil, because that's what the Hollywood machine did, and I didn't know why. Like I thought it was all true because that's how they set it up, is so that everybody believes that this is the most evil person on the planet. And obviously, we've seen something very similar with Kanye West, because we all know who you're not allowed to talk about. It's very strange how you can go outside in your Catholic nun drag queen outfit and make fun of Catholics, make fun of Christians. You can't really make fun of Muslims or Islam or anything like that, even though they are probably the most vocal pushing back on the alphabet mafia. There's still somehow, some way that they can't be made fun of, or you can't make jokes about them, or you can't say anything about them. And then of course you have the other group, the sacred group that does not, that they don't own media or Hollywood or real estate or banking. They have nothing to do with any of that, but you can't, you can't discuss them. So somehow, I guess my point is, am I on board 100% with what Mel Gibson is saying? Probably not. He's a little bit of a character, but is it far more believable than Richie the Barber? Yes, mostly because he's been around it for much longer, as I understand it. And B, he has the track record of the machine trying to kill him for getting drunk and saying something about that certain group. And then I think there was another time, or maybe it was the same phone call or the same issue, when I think he was like screaming at his daughter or something. He was drunk.
Right.
Eating a cheeseburger off the floor or something weird.
No,
like
don't
that.
get confused with David Hasselhoff now.
Oh, that's racist.
David Hasselhoff was drunk on the floor. That is racist. You're confusing a German guy with an Australian guy with their whites.
Okay, yeah.
But there was a phone call of
some
kind.
About his daughter, though, right? Or is that
Hasselhoff
too? Okay, all right.
The Hasselhoff was also his daughter, but that's because he's a drunken buffoon. The Hoff. Do you know that like Baywatch used to get like 70 million views? I think was their finale.
Yeah, well, I don't know about their views, but I do remember it.
My friend watches it on the free Samsung TV. My friend puts it on. Mel Gibson's been around a long time. One of his first movies was being a World War I think Messenger. It's Australian. He does a lot of sprinting in the movie. Mad Max 1 and 2, Australian originals. The Patriot. He cares about America. And yeah, when the machine comes after you, that's why I still think it's weird every time people can't see something like Crane coming or the lockdown stuff coming. Anytime that the media en masse or the Titanic submarine thing is the most, let's care about these. Rest in peace. Don't want anybody to die. But that's the most important thing in the world, that these billionaires are going on the submarine. And every time the machine pushes something, and you see it on all social medias, the Amazon wildfires, the BLM,
now the Titanic thing, though, just out of sheer coincidence, and I don't know if you noticed this. I don't think we discussed it, at least not here on the show. But I actually happened to see. I turned on Netflix. because it's the only place where I can watch my reruns of Seinfeld ad nauseum, because there's nothing else good on the entirety of television. So I'm going on to log on to Netflix to watch Seinfeld, and of course they are running some sort of Titanic documentary like the day after the news. But I saw it, so it wasn't. I hadn't even seen it in the news. Like, so just to put into perspective how like quickly they were on this. Now maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe they were always planning to re-release this Titanic documentary. But what are the odds, right? Like, everybody's talking about the Titanic and the submarine, and the first thing on the Netflix menu is a documentary about that. And I saw that before that was headline news. So then the next morning I wake up and Netflix is in bad taste for promoting Titanic documentary, and it's like, is it? Are they?
This is a bad taste, but the 13-year-old dancing movie.
Okay, yeah. The cuties. Who? How could we forget about that? But, or have we come that far to the point where they are that obviously taking advantage of, of the news cycle like that? Not just because look, I'm not gonna lie and sit here and say like, oh, it's so sad. Like, I didn't know those people. I'm not like broken up about it. It's sad. Yes, nobody wants to see some. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to see that. But have we come that far to the point where, they're all in cahoots, right? So the media is pumping the story like you said. So this is the only thing that we're supposed to talk about for nearly a week, and then Netflix comes up. So are we pretending that those two things are not related at all?
I think there's two sides, where one side is the media's going to, as soon as the media realizes that people are going to click on something, pump it out, which you expect them to do. And then the other side is that's a government approved storyline, because the Bidens, I'll call them, knew about the Navy knowing that that the ship went down 4 or 5 days from Monday. On Monday, they knew it was destroyed. On Friday, they came out with the news. They let the news cycle go because it benefits them. So if the media gets their claws into something, and I'm part of the media, you're part of the media, we know how it works. They're going to keep going with it, and that's to be expected. People are trying to make money, as long as it's not, there's levels to how degrading and disgusting it can be. But as long as the government approves of it, then it's going to go that much even further. We see what happens with pharmaceuticals and stuff, when that could be a big story. Side effect this, or putting people in jail, that. But the government doesn't approve of that, so your CNNs and your MSNBCs are going to dial it back, as opposed to websites that popped up during lockdowns that became popular. I don't even like this website, but LifeSite News. Nothing against them, just not a fan. They popped up because people weren't saying the truth about this stuff. Another example of a network, Right Side Broadcasting. They popped up because people stopped showing Trump rallies. So this stuff happens, and if the government approves of the topic, then the virality of it becomes tenfold, if you know what I'm saying. Let's take a quick bill payment here. Unauthorized opinions. You can go to uopod.com. It'll show you all of our links, and you'll even get previews of our podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We're available on Apple. We're available on iHeartRadio. We're available on Google. And you might be watching on Rumble right now, and you might be listening on Amazon Podcasts. Shout out to everybody listening and watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're listening, give us a review. Now, at the UFC event last night, Eric, which we already mentioned, there were some racial tensions flaring. And I might have to reload these pages, unfortunately. I hope not. Let me see if this works. Okay, it's going to work.
Now, were racial tensions actually flaring?
No. Well, yes and no. Okay, so here's the setup. So the main event, or it wasn't the main event. Who did Dricus du Plessis fight? So that is the middleweight. So he fought Robert Whittaker. There was a lot of Australians on the card and a lot of Mexicans on the card. But Robert Whittaker, an Australian, fought a South African guy named Dricus du Plessis. Interesting name for a South African guy. White guy, though. And his whole pre-fight preamble, we'll call it, was Africa is all one continent. Let's coincide with each other. Let's live together in harmony. And I'm sitting there being like, bro, you can't represent an entire continent. Like, the Mexican fighters aren't coming out here and saying, like, let's go North America. South Africa, you got Morocco, which is French, and Algeria, French. Muslims and stuff. Then you got Ethiopians, you got Egyptians, you got West Africans. I'm sorry, as happy as kumbaya you want to be, you're not like Africa cannot be represented by saying it's an entire continent of people. You know what I'm saying? So that was his goody two shoes, like PR thing that he was doing, even though he's in South Africa and they made it legal to seize land from white people if they wanted to, if they wanted your farm. So that was his whole bit. He wins.
Now,
He become,
really quickly,
yeah.
sorry, this is a little bit random, but I notice how here in the States, the thing is to say African American, right? Do they do that in any other country? Is it?
They don't really do that here either. No.
African Canadian or
no.
African British, African like.
I don't know.
What country are we supposed to be talking about? It doesn't really make any sense. It never really did. No. So I'm just a genuine question. Like, do you say African Spaniard, or do you just?
I don't know. I don't think so. We don't call them African Canadians here, because it's mostly Caribbean people. But so Israel Adesanya, who is the Nigerian/New Zealander champion of his division, came into the ring and dropped a lot of N-bombs on him. And I enjoyed it, Eric, because here you have this white guy who's South African doing his whole, let's all be one. And even though I'm in a country where my government kind of hates me, I love, like, let's be together and racial harmony and stuff. And then Adesanya comes in. He's like, oh, are you really African, dude? Are you really African? Are you my brother? And I'll just play it for you. That was it. And the thing is, Israel Adesanya is known to be a nice guy. He didn't care that Joe Rogan had a bunch of N-bomb clips. And I think he's just trying to sell this. He's even wearing, I'd say, a chauvinistic t-shirt, Eric, that says he is not your bank, which is very pro-male. But yeah, I think it's just funny because this guy wanted all this racial harmony, and then the black guy comes and says, you're not actually African. And like Israel Adesanya doesn't live in Africa. Like, he's less African than some of the other African-born UFC stars. But I think he's just playing a game here. And then we can get to Dana White, who said, and this guy also had something to say. Do you have any comments before we hear the typical UFC cringe reporting where they try to make this like a big deal?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious now. Look, everybody knows. Anybody who's watched this show a little bit knows. I'm not a fan. I like the guys. I like how kind of down to earth they are, and how, like, they pull no punches, and they're not weirdo puppet of Chinese people like the NBA players for the most part, right? I like that. But am I sitting down and watching you? Am I paying for any of this? Absolutely not, bro. To watch these guys kick the crap out of each other, it's just not my thing. And I know a lot of people don't like that. Everybody wants to watch that. That's fine. You could do that. And like I said, I would much rather. I wish the NBA players would act like the UFC guys. But all that said, I think it's entertainment, bro. I mean, it's entertainment. So he's getting up there. He's going to ruffle some feathers. And here we are talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. And that's part of his job. So, yeah, I mean, you have to get clicks, right? Some guys might let a black dude bang their wife and get clicks that way. Some guy might go into the ring and just start dropping N-bombs and get clicks that way. There's a whole bunch of different ways to skin a cat, which I think you're not even supposed to say anymore, according to PETA, neither here nor there. But the point is, he knows what he's doing. He's an entertainer, and mission accomplished.
Well, the UFC's #1 reporter, I'm not sure. I think he works for USA Today. Can't confirm that in my mind right now, but John Morgan's his name. Let's call him super heavyweight reporter, obesity wise. And most of the time he serves up like the questions. He's always first. And 95% of the time he serves up the questions that he knows the UFC wants to be asked, makes them look good at his job. But here, this is the 5% where, he's cringe. Got to share the right one.
Nasty things. I know you say, hey, this is the fight business. People say nasty things, right? But the tension between those two and kind of the racial undertones and all those things, how do you...
What were the racial undertones?
Drigga says he's the real African fighter, and so, Israel dropped some N-words in there tonight.
So what was the racial? Who did? Who dropped the racial?
Israel was saying over and over, yeah.
He's black.
50 N-bombs.
Okay, he's black. Who gives a shit?
I was going to say, so you don't have any concern about the way the build-up, the tension between those two?
I could care less. This is the fight business. Israel Adesanya can say whatever he wants to say. Who gives a shit? Why are people bitching about that?
Some people.
Of course they are. Oh, fucking A. All right, got it. Yeah. Too fucking bad.
All right.
Yeah.
Last thing for me, then, I just want to add.
What I think Dana was doing there is he wants him to say it. Because, of course, he knows this is going to happen. He just pretends like he doesn't know what's going on. But I think he wants to explain. And that's what we never get, Eric, is we never get the explanation from the reporters in the media as to why they think something is racist. Because it's actually their, presuppositions that are actually the racist thoughts. Or it's just like, I always go Australian for some reason. I have a problem with this. You must have a problem with this. He's calling him the N-word, and he's actually white, you know? But, yeah, Dana White says he doesn't care, and that we'll get your thoughts after the South African guy with some epic music talks over this.
Like a clown in there. No, that's not how a champion behaves. That's not how a man behaves. He's behaving like a child. Conduct yourself like a champion. There's people looking up to you, and you're behaving like that. If that sells tickets, good for him. I'll sell tickets my way. I'm a gentleman. I'm a man. And I'll behave like a man.
That's the thing, though, Eric. I watch this guy, and I'm just like, I cringe at your let's all love each other. And then now it's like, oh, you're behaving like a baby because you didn't adhere to my basically social justice talking points. Any thoughts?
Well, look, I don't know. I didn't see his, weirdo kumbaya story or whatever he was saying before that. But I think they're both just doing the job, and it's working. We're not the only ones talking about it. Other people are talking about it. So this guy, who last time we talked about him, he was mocking the kid after he knocked the guy out. Knocked out the other,
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, fine. You might not like it. Other people do like it. And yeah, bro, it does sell tickets. I know his name, and I don't watch UFC. Adesanya, Israel Adesanya, whatever. Okay, so I don't really know his name. I know a little bit, but I don't know the other guy from a ham sandwich. So his system is working, and yeah, dude, fine. Go out there and do your weird social justice, one world stuff. That's fine. But as far as I think the UFC fans are concerned, it's not going to get as many clicks as just being a little bit more maybe outlandish or a little bit more wild. But I think I don't have a problem with what either one of these guys said. I think they're trying to sell tickets. It was probably sold out. They probably did a good job. But when it's all said and done, I think even in the UFC where let's say this, in the mainstream, obviously you have to root for the black guy, otherwise you're a racist. But even in the UFC, the black guy is just cooler. He's just cooler. He's funnier. He's more entertaining than you, right? So. Conduct yourself like a champion. Whatever, bro. Fine. Like, you do it your way, like you said. He'll do it his way, and he's probably going to end up making more money and being more popular, and putting more asses in the seats than you.
It's interesting because I'm sure there's somewhere out there, if Israel Adesanya if they allowed UFC to be more mainstream and have the UFC fighters' opinions be more culturally significant, as a LeBron James, as the NBA who says take the MLB and all these people take the All-Star game out of Atlanta. Take the All-Star game out of Atlanta because Atlanta's voting. Atlanta's putting in voting ID laws. So let's take money away from the black city. That whole stuff. If they allowed that to happen.
Wasn't that baseball, just for the record? Didn't that happen in
baseball? But LeBron James is the one who said that it was evil there. The voting in Georgia. If there would be articles about Israel Adesanya being a white supremacist because he's from New Zealand and because he defended Joe Rogan saying the N-word. We mentioned a couple of cuckisms off the top. And Bill de Blasio, who is the former mayor of New York City, his wife, who, if you didn't know, is a black woman, it would appear.
She looks like Flavor Flav. We should have put up side by side because she looks like Flavor Flav. Okay.
What's her name?
Shirlane McRae.
That's a great name.
Yeah, she couldn't be bothered to take his name, right? He's the mayor.
You can't do that.
The biggest city in the country. She couldn't be bothered to take his name. I look. And people would say this is racist, but she literally, like, at first glance, like, she looks like Flavor Flav. Like, I can't get over
Nothing comes up, unfortunately.
I have to make my own. You know what I mean? Well, you're spelling it wrong, so that could be why.
Flav. You ever watch the show, Flavor of Love? You remember that?
Mini. You know, I think
I just remember how they're stupid their names were.
Well, I remember there was like a dozen spin-off shows. So he was with the big German lady.
Yep.
Or
and then they had the lesbian one with the two girls.
Yeah. That seemed like it went on for a decade almost, like from 2000 to 2010 or 02 to 2012 or something. They were really running the table, I guess, perhaps a little bit before Twitter was really popping, before social media really took over. That was sort of the thing. But yeah, the Flavor Flav thing aside,
they're getting divorced and they're going to stay in the same house. They're separating to date other people without moving out or divorcing. So I don't know what that means. He probably won't give her the divorce. He doesn't want to give up the money. I don't know. Let's read a little bit, see if we get some more information. But this is cuckery in the basic sense of the word, is it not?
Yeah, and can we just let's just take a note that the cuckery is spreading now, right? Like we're trying to normalize this behavior. Obviously, Adam 22, most notably, is who for the record was already a millionaire, right? Like you didn't have to do that. Bill de Blasio, who is probably doing pretty well for himself also. Shirlane McRae, who couldn't account for $80 million she was supposed to be using for the Thrive NYC account. And I have a story about that maybe we could get into later, but I promise you it was in fact a scam. You know, just in its purest form. It was completely fake. It was all nonsense. But it's just funny how do these, and maybe I'm a little bit too hypersensitive to it, but how are these things happening like basically at the same time? I mean, the millionaire mayor and his wife are not separating, but they're going to date other people, while another millionaire in Los Angeles is basically renting out his wife. They just got married. There was a whole Danny Mullen video of them only a month or so ago, you know, documenting the entire thing. But for a couple more dollars, for a couple more podcast clicks, you want to sell your wife to some black dude? Like, it's just beyond the pale, bro. How is this happening? I mean, obviously the media is in control of all this, right? So they can pick and choose when to run stuff, but it's just a little weird. Like they're almost trying to normalize this behavior. Like you know, they're just trying to put it out there. Like this week we're gonna make sure that we try to normalize cuckery, and it's just kind of an agenda thing. It's very weird.
Shout out Destiny. Former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio and his wife Shirlane McRae announced their separation Wednesday, blaming his derided political career for torpedoing their nearly 3-decade marriage. De Blasio and McRae, who previously identified as a lesbian, will remain married and continue living together in their Park Slope, Brooklyn abode as they date other people, they said in an hours-long sit-down with the New York Times. Imagine you're a reporter and you're just having an hour. That must be the most tiring thing. It's like acting like you're in the 90s or sometime when newspapers were more sustainable and credible, where you sit down with the former mayors for hours and talk about his cuckery and then have to type up a 3-page newspaper article about it. Talk about boring as all hell. They hours long sit down. Asked whether de Blasio's tumultuous 8 years in Gracie Mansion capped by deeply unfavorable ratings.
That link might be worth clicking.
This one? Or tumultuous?
The New York Times one. It might link to the New York Times article behind a paywall, but just out of curiosity, like, what?
Oh, it's paywalled.
Okay, all
right. I thought it was a distraction. McRae, who's 68, also told the Times her hubby's failed. Why do you write like this, dude? Hubby's, abode. Like, you can come up with more words for house and husband. The Times of her hubby's failed White House run, while admitting that she knew she had to be supportive anyway. This is not the kind of thing where you can break ranks, she said. That's part of the difficulty of being part of a package. It's not very independent woman of her to not be able to tell him that she doesn't want him to run for mayor. You dressed like Spock here? They are dressed as Spock and suit. Who was the black girl in Star Trek? I don't remember.
I never watched Star Trek, but this is just about as phony as the Slick Willie and Hillary relationship, right? Like it's all completely fake, bro. Like,
so you don't want to be together anymore, but you're doing an hours-long sit-down with the New York Times. She's 68, he's 62, and he says, "Why aren't you lovey-dovey anymore?" If this was a real relationship, Eric, it would kill you to sit there and talk about how your wife doesn't love you anymore, and you wouldn't want to do it in front of a reporter. Is there a podcast behind this? Is this the Tulsi Gabbard or the royal family effect here, that there's a podcast coming? What if I control F podcast?
You know what? That's a great thing. Or a book or something. There must be something going on.
I'm typing in show. Let's see if we see any of that. No, I don't think so. Book? I just don't understand why you would want to do this interview. In any event, this is actual literal cuckery. You're gonna bring home dates. Bill de Blasio is gonna bring home a hot date. Bill de Blasio's wife, who's gonna go back to bringing home women, I guess. Let's see if there's anything else in this.
Wait, but so we're expecting them to just be separated but stay married indefinitely while they is Bill de Blasio is going to go out and go to the bar? He's going to get some weirdo matchmaking service. Like, what? None of this makes any sense, bro. But
how can you be?
Well, I think it might not say in this article like you did the Control F for, but if you open a new tab and maybe just type in Bill de Blasio podcast or Bill de Blasio book, or maybe it's her, maybe something else should be behind this. Otherwise, it's just, I guess it's just a little bit of an attention grab. Like, if they haven't been and nobody's been talking about them since he left office and replaced him with the weirdo, milk dud Eric Adams, who's completely a terrible person.
Well, the last thing is 2 months ago, him talking about how Florida's going to be bad. So I think maybe he's just trying to stay in the news here. What's her name again?
Shirlane. Ugh. And so what? She was a lesbian before she married him, and now what? She's gonna be on Hinge. She's gonna go to a lesbian bar. What is happening here? And she's almost 70 years old. Give it a rest.
She's got a book. I'm not sure when it came out. Can You Date Within a Marriage? Time Magazine. Books and audiobooks. So she's an author. They're going to promote themselves. This is like, I just don't understand. It's like this is their equivalent of going on Oprah, going to the New York Times. Pretty sad thing. Did you see, I'm just thinking about politicians who probably don't sleep with their wives. Did you see Joe Biden shirtless the other day?
No. Actually, I saw
Biden at the beach.
I saw side by side. It was I think somebody put Trump at the UFC side by side, shaking hands with people, and like sort of playing Donald Trump as this like super popular stud, and then Joe Biden like kind of doing like a weirdo, like almost like a heroin nod, shirtless at the beach. I think I saw something like that. I didn't know that was a recent photo. I thought that was probably an old video. Look at the guy. Oh, Jesus.
It's weird to see a shirtless president.
That's disgusting. But I wanted to mention really quickly, though, about look at this guy does not know what's going on. Who is in charge, bro? It's the Human Rights Campaign. It's the Council on Foreign Affairs. It's the WEF. It's, it's very obvious to anybody, even, the people who claim to like him, the CNNs and the MSNBCs, everybody knows this guy's not in charge. But I wanted to back up really quickly and say that Shirlane McCray, who couldn't account for about $80 million a couple of years back, I think it was 2019 or something, when she couldn't show any receipts for the money that she had been given to spearhead this mental health organization in New York City. So, of course, I called the number. Like, they put ads all over the city at the time, like, and I think this was pre-Rona. Like, it started pre-Rona, but I didn't call it until I couldn't go to work because the deadly virus was right outside my front door. But I remember calling the number and they said, somebody to talk to, or like, of course they foist all of this. They foist all of this nonsense on you, drive you crazy. Oh, don't leave the house without a mask. Get a shot. Get 2 shots. Don't talk to people. You have to be. It's dangerous to talk to somebody on the subway. I mean, they threw everything at the wall. Of course, we all know I knew it was completely fake. Social distancing, 6 feet was completely arbitrary. All of that stuff. And then they come out and say, if you're having a hard time, call or text this number and we'll help you. So I called them and I started asking them about the money that couldn't be accounted for. But there's so many steps ahead that if you ask them about the $80 million, it's a mental health hotline. So they just are going to call you crazy. There's nothing you can say to probe them about any of their wrongdoings, right? So you can't ask Bill de Blasio about anything. I can't even, at this particular point in time, I can't remember another thing bigger than the $80 million that went missing. But Bill de Blasio was obviously an awful mayor. Everybody knows it, left, right, and center, and actually did. Before I was even doing my own street videos, I helped a couple of other creators talk to New Yorkers about Bill de Blasio, and nobody liked him. I'm talking about 60-year-old Republicans. I'm talking about 18-year-old communists and everybody in between. Nobody had anything good to say about him. So he's clearly terrible, but they set it up to where you can't win, right? You can't ask them a question. Even when I was asking them questions about how to get a Rona test, it's all set up to where they basically will just call you crazy. I mean, you either obey everything we say or you're a nut job, and you have no recourse, right? So we don't care about anybody. We're not going to care about the taxpaying citizens of New York. We're going to claim that we care about the junkies sleeping on the platform, but we're not going to do anything for them either. We're certainly not going to help the people who have to dodge the junkies who are throwing things on the track and pushing people on the track and slicing people up. None of that matters. We're going to set up a hotline, and anything you say, we'll just say, well, you're a crazy person, and they might try to give you they might try to get you to some free clinic so they can pump you full of some pills or something. It's all a complete mess. And the last thing here, to get back to their relationship, honestly, where does this end? They're not going to get a divorce, so they're going to stay married and date some other people and live in the same house. Where are their kids? Do they eventually get divorced, or it's just indefinitely a weirdo, boomer open relationship? How did we even get here? And think about, this is the guy who was running the country's biggest city for what, 8 years or something. These are the people that are in charge, and it's all absolutely disgusting.
Well, Joe Biden going to the beach. Justin Trudeau went to his annual stop at the Calgary Stampede, which is a thing here in Canada, like a bull riding and thing where Alberta pretends that it's Texas. And Justin Trudeau showed up with his belt buckle, and 10 people enjoy that he's there, and he wears a cowboy hat. So this is the state of Canadian politics. People commenting, people going, first of all, the conservative leader here looks like Ron DeSantis right here. I think that's what he's going for. Justin Trudeau is effeminate, scrawny, and aging. Pierre Poilievre is younger, stronger, and fit. It's game over for Justin Trudeau. This is the Robert F. Kennedy stuff here. Justin Trudeau's not as hot as this male guy that I support. The guy I support is actually a hot, fit, old dude. And there was one other thing the same guy said, too. He said he looked buff or something. Yeah. Debuts a new look and he's jacked. Time to bring home that female vote. Like, it's so weird. People who have become these right-wing, older guys around our age, 30, 40 and more, once they find a guy that they support politically, they don't see how weird it is how quickly they just become fanboys of this guy. Robert F. Kennedy. Look how hot he is, shirtless, doing push-ups. Did you see some of the comments on that when we were talking about it? This was actually cut from a video where he did a longer workout. He's actually stronger than you're portraying him to be.
What? No, I didn't see any of those, but I saw somebody on my Instagram account who, a normal woman, like based, as the kids might say, and actually stated, basically admitted to being like to like fawning over like I never thought I would ever vote Democrat again, but he looks so healthy, and this would be the only. And so there's like a little bit of that. Was at least one person I saw being sort of self-aware about it, versus this guy who seems to be so far gone that like doesn't even realize it's creepy, or maybe he does realize that it's creepy. But as far as this woman is concerned, it's like, so yes, you can realize that you've kind of fallen into this thing, into this pattern of like judging this guy on looks, whatever, even though he's 70 years old, but it's still just a weirdo Democrat. He's still like, I don't, and I know this is not gonna sound good, but dog, you don't sound confident. You sound like you're about to die. I get it. Oh, he's got this disease, and don't judge him on that, bro. You're wobbly, dog. You don't breed confidence. Yeah, we get it. Like, you don't like.
You can't say that about their guy, though. You can only say that about Biden, and that's the thing. If somebody was posting something about how great shape Justin Trudeau looked, or how great shape Pete Buttigieg looked, you just be like, "That's weird that you're saying that." Are you attracted to him? But Pierre Poilievre looks jacked. Look how jacked RFK is. It's just, it's a
but RFK
adult man.
Is still
70.
I don't think he's going to stand up to the establishment. I just don't. I could be totally wrong. I think it's a long shot. So even if he did become president, he's not gonna clean house of the swamp. I mean, Donald Trump couldn't even do that, and I trust him to do that far more than I trust RFK to do it. But that aside, he's still a weirdo, climate alarmist, gun grabbing hack. It doesn't even matter. So yeah, he said, and we've talked about this several times. Guy on the other side of the aisle says one thing I like, and now he's just a stud. No, he's not, bro. He's a weirdo guy with a shaky voice who's talking about the climate change, and he still wants to get your guns. I pass on all that. It's ridiculous.
Shout out everybody in the chat. Shout out Rebel Patriot. Shout out Angie Oxford, who said this podcast better be good. Shout out somebody who told us we were late. And then shout out some guy named More Buff, More Muff. Shout out Rumble. Rumble's been hot for us. If you missed any of this podcast, please subscribe, or you can catch it on the audio / Spotify's video version as well. But all the audio versions are out tomorrow, every Monday. Consider our patreon.com/UOPod for the bonus podcast every week, excuse me. Last word to you, Eric.
Buy my book, of course. It only gets better with age. You should know that by now. And look forward to some new stuff. I'm in a new place. We're gonna have some new content. It's gonna be fun.
Turn it up, Jordan.